Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Carrow Road. Norwich City have lost their eighth Carrow Road game, 2-1 here to Leicester City. A lot of the themes we're going to talk about are going to be very similar to what we have discussed. I've just, actually, as I was setting up my tripod, Norwich City's squad made their way around the pitch and just underneath that big screen there. Police orders, really. Police escorted out of the ground, where they've got a coach, which they got to the ground today after last week's protests that saw a lot of their cars blocked in. That was on the advice of police. As we speak, there are hundreds of people who have gathered outside the director's entrance. There are loads more outside the south stand. This is not Norwich City, this, in terms of what this football club should be about and the work it does in the community, the joy that it should provoke. I think a lot about. I've got a little lad who is going to turn 6 actually at the end of the international break, and he is beginning to show signs of developing interest in football, and he started football training, and it is. I'm sure many parents out there can relate to this. It's the most joyful thing you can see when you'll watch your kids kind of fall in love and go down the same road that you went down when you began to love this game. And it'd be difficult for me in the current climate anyway with my job to kind of take him to a game. But I think a lot about the people who and the kids who maybe for the first time today were coming to Carrow Road, or maybe over the recent weeks have come to Carrow Road, and to be in a position where players are being police escorted outside of the grounds, where there's calls for people to go. There's protests outside the entrance. I'm not blaming any of those people, by the way, but the fact that it's been allowed to fester and get to this state is so sad, so unnecessary, and I'm afraid an indictment on those who are running this football club at the moment, and running this football club very, very badly. And this now, as I said, has got to a stage where it is a safety concern for the people involved, for the players, for their families. That's not what this club is about. That's not what this club should be. And it's just very, very sad. And when I do these verdicts, I try and. It's a very difficult thing, and I'm not playing any violins. I love doing this job. I love recording these videos, and from the time I took over, really, I've tried to be quite clear on what I do, and that is about saying what I see and trying to be honest with people, and not trying to lie to people or kid to people. I mean, you can see a police officer there, still presence inside Carrow Road. And I mean, what can you say after 8 defeats here? It's a really sorry state of affairs. Norwich are in the bottom 3. They're cut adrift, 4 points short. Enough is enough now. It can't go on like this. It should not go on like this. And I think the people who run this football club tonight, today, have got to have a very real look at what is going on here in terms of protests. I mean, if I spin round here, the lawnmowers are in action. The guys doing a brilliant work. There's still some players hanging around in and around the dugout, waiting to be told to leave. That is a result of this club's and the people who run its complete inability to read a room and to make change and to listen to supporters who feel rightly furious, rightly disappointed. And I think from my perspective, like it just doesn't need to be like this. It doesn't need to be a football club that is full of anger, that is full of hatred, that is full of disappointment, underwhelm. That young kids don't want to come to the ground. Families of players don't want to come to the grounds. Players are getting escorted out. I just don't recognise it. It is completely. I just had a chat with Mark Webber, who does some brilliant work for the BBC and was outside with the protests there today. Every aspect of this football club feels completely, comprehensively, fundamentally shattered, broken, gone, finished. And I just genuinely don't know where this goes or how it changes or how it progresses. Of course, I think ultimately it will be Liam Manning who carries the can for what has happened on the pitch, and we'll get into the game in a moment. But I'm afraid just stopping and starting there isn't good enough, and isn't going to stop this. and end what is a real cauldron of misery. It's getting dangerous now, and I think people need to wake up and realise what is going on, and the risks they are putting their players, their members of staff, their families under. And again, to be absolutely clear, I don't want this to come across the wrong way. I'm not blaming fans. I'm not blaming the people that are out there and protesting, because uh, what can you say? What good is there? What substantial is there to cling on to? This is a football club that has developed an us and them relationship. It is people at a football club who are imposing a strategy, imposing a direction onto a fan base. And you think about what this club has been like when it's been at its powerful best, when Farker was taking it up to the Premier League, Paul Lambert when he was taking it up through the leagues. It was togetherness, it was spirit, it was everybody, owners, directors, coaches, players, fans, everybody singing on the same hymn sheet. And when you get that here, when you do that here, it is so powerful. And it can, it's as powerful as anything I've seen in the country. And instead we're here tonight when we are reflecting on it's just so sad. It's such a sorry state of affairs. And as somebody who loves this football club, was a fan of this football club, is a fan of this football club, reports on this football club, it's I can understand why people are emotional and why people are disappointed, because they spend a lot of money, and they come to this place to feel something and to feel connected and to take their eyes and their ears off the struggles of everyday life. There's enough going on in the world, enough bad stuff. There's wars, it's a struggle, everything is too expensive, and nobody is paid enough. It's crap enough out there, really, without having to come here, which should be a place of escapism, should be a place of community, should be a place of people coming together and falling in love with people on that pitch, because they produce moments of brilliance. And the despair and the drama and the jeopardy that is involved in it, there's no jeopardy here at this moment in time. This is a football club that loses games, continues to lose games, and has just been completely overtaken by inertia and by that inability to act. And it cannot go on. It must not go on now. And genuinely, people, the Atanasios out there, and if they are watching, if they aren't watching, who am I to implore them to do anything? But stop this, and stop this now. They are the people that have the power to change this, to move it in a different direction, and to make sure that it changes, and to get it back to a football club that I recognise, that the people in these stands recognise, and that empowers what we see on the pitch. Because at the moment there is absolutely none of that. It is a football club that is broken, that is shattered, and that is gone, and in serious need of repair. And the idea, I'm afraid, that one managerial change, swapping out one head coach for another, for me, is trimming around the edges. This is, I'm afraid, now over a long period of time, institutional failure at this football club in terms of where they are, where they're heading, and where they currently stand. To lose 8 games at home at Carrow Road, that is institutional failure. That has never happened before at this football club. It is unprecedented. It has very rarely happened in the EFL, in English football, in world football. It should not happen. It does not happen, but it has happened. I didn't think Norwich were that bad today. If we're going to move on to the game, I thought for 70 minutes there was energy there. There was it wasn't a lot of quality, if I'm being honest, but that was the case throughout the two sides, and the way that they performed and the way that they played. They were low on confidence. I thought Norwich had structure about them, had energy about them in that fourth. It was a 4-4-2 variation of 4-2-4. I think is when they've looked at their best this season, when they've looked at their most potent, when they've looked at probably their most competitive. But they did that really without creating anything. First half, it was a drive from Makama. I'm still struggling with cough. I apologise. It was Makama up the line, and he flashed a shot across that Begovic got a good hand to. But I think we'd still say that Leicester created the better chances. It was Patson Daka's header who just flicked a ball just wide. That was the best that Leicester came. But it was a really low quality game. And to be honest, I thought that suited Norwich, because at the moment, with the confidence so low, with everything where it is, that's kind of where the place where Norwich are going to stay in games. And they actually got themselves in front. And I felt probably could. It was a tight game. I don't think there could be too many arguments really, but it came from a misplaced pass from Leicester, who were constantly looking to try and get the ball into Daka's feet and just work and play off that, and did that with limited success really. But it comes from them trying to get up the pitch. Callum Fisher brilliantly steps in, plays it sort of through Matson's legs to Chris Gore, and the first shot is blocked. The second one is a exquisite finish, and I think when you look and you think about what this season could have been and where they might be if he was fit for this season, because he's probably one of the only bits of recruitment at the moment, certainly one of those that they spent big money on, who looks the business. It was an excellent finish, an expertly crafted finish. And from there, I mean, I have to say, for all of the talk and for all of the preamble that I started this with, you think about the fans today. I thought they were superb. I thought they were absolutely brilliant. There was a lot of talk today about, levels of toxicity, about protest, about when it would begin, it would be aimed at, for 70 minutes, and up till really the Leicester equaliser. I thought everyone to a man today really stood up in this place and got behind the team. Nobody in there can have any complaints about the way this fan base and this crowd acted this evening and today and this afternoon, because they got right behind their team, and that's because they showed spirit and fight, and there was energy. As I said, I didn't think there was a lot of quality in there, but I think you can forgive that when you see the intent, you see the energy, you see the purpose. So they get themselves 1-0 up, and then inevitably, I think with this group at the moment and where they're at, they just kind of froze. They went into their shells. Suddenly it was about retreating. Leicester made a triple change. They brought Mavididi on. They brought Reed on, who I thought was outstanding when he came on and changed the course of the game, because up until that point, I thought Leicester looked pretty ordinary. They were playing in front of Norwich, to the side of Norwich. There wasn't really that penetration that we've seen teams have when they've come here, and in terms of really exploiting the spaces that Norwich leave. They had some good chances, I would say, before the goal, but nothing massively clear cut. There was a couple of good saves from Kovacevic, but the goal is just a shambles, really. It's a ball down the right. Norwich, I thought Kenny McLean defended Fatawu pretty well for the most part, but the quality of player he is, if he does wriggle away, if he does get away, he causes problems. The cross comes in. Norwich players, I think it's McLean and Topic, just don't really know where the ball is. Fatawu gets it gets flicked out to Reed. Lovely controlled volley into the back of the net. From there, Norwich made a change. Chris Goran came off, who obviously scored the opening goal of the game. That's clearly about managing minutes. Still, we're still in that process with him. And initially, that was Forson who came on, and they retained the shape. A little bit later, they went to a back three. Rory McConville came on, and it felt like it was trying to shore it up for a point. I know that will frustrate people, but to an extent, you can understand it. But I felt really from the moment that Norwich scored, Leicester looked the most likely to go on and not just draw this game, but to win it, in terms of the intent they showed, the quality they showed. They were overloaded Norwich's back line, which I think is probably why Liam Manning went to a back five. But all that did really, and you saw it for the goal, was create a massive bit of space when you go and then commit and try and push all those players into the box. You leave a big space sort of between your 6-yard box and the edge of your penalty area. Matson has let Jordan James go. It's a cross from Fatawu, a free header in the 93rd minute that he knocks into the back of the net, and that condemns Norwich to an 8th straight defeat here. But again, to reiterate, I thought a lot of what Norwich did today, I think by their standards, of course, so bear this in mind, I thought was good. I thought had energy. I thought had intent. There was at least a structure about them. But that inability to respond, that them going in their shell, I'm afraid ultimately that is going to be on Liam Manning. That is going to be on the coaching team. And I got the response you would expect from a fan base that, like I say, I thought were excellent today in terms of getting right behind them. And obviously the reaction at the end is the reaction at the end in terms of what you expect. That's carried on through both sort of ends of the ground. Liam Manning, I think, looks a broken man. Look, I know it won't be popular. I've dealt with him personally and seen his interactions and watched him kind of face to face in close quarters, and he's a very good guy. He's a very nice guy, and I believe he cares deeply about this football club. But I'm afraid it's got to a stage now where it's too far gone, where it is at a stage where the fans have lost confidence, not just in him, but also in the people running this football club, the strategy of this football club. And it's been a calamitous 24 hours for this football club. Let's be honest about it. The statement yesterday was just red rag to a bull. Really, I thought nobody should be getting abuse, and I sincerely hope that line hasn't been crossed today. I haven't heard any anecdotes that it has. But it was a very, very small minority last week, albeit still unacceptable, absolutely, of course. And that came from the ownership. I thought look, Liam had kind of had his say on that. I felt that was where it should have been left. Then the accounts come out, and you have the sporting review from Ben Napper, and irrespective of when those words were written, they were released yesterday afternoon, and it was about Liam Manning getting the club to the Premier League, and the accounts are dreadful in terms of the state that it's in, and 122% of wages on turnover. That's not sustainable, even with the ownership model that they have now. So, yeah, a really bad 24 hours for this club. A really bad night today, and as I said, just immensely sad. And it now, I'm afraid, if it goes on like this, it is negligence. It shouldn't, for those individuals involved, for the type of bloke that Liam Manning is. He does not deserve to be put through this after what's gone on in the past 12 months. But I know people will be screaming in terms of, well, that doesn't mean anything, and about how nice the bloke he is because it's the job that he's done. And of course, we recognise that. I think everyone recognises what he's done isn't good enough. He recognises that. I think he admitted post game that he is still very fortunate to be in his job, because a lot of other clubs that would not have been the case for as long as it has. I think Norwich City have given him probably more time than any other club would have. I suspect their reasoning for that is they wanted to give him the maximum amount of time they could to try and do this job properly. Do I think he's been given the tools properly? No. Do I think there are bigger problems at Norwich? Yes. But I'm afraid this story ends with Liam Manning no longer being Norwich City head coach. Because you cannot preside over what he has presided over in terms of performances and results for a long period. 15 games is a big enough sample. He's got the worst win percentage of any Norwich manager. They're 4 points adrift in the bottom three, and it just, not to kind of Mick McCarthy myself, but genuinely this can't go on like this now. It's too far gone, and it's now about a rescue mission, a fixing mission. And I go back to kind of what I said in terms of that fan relationship. It feels for too long at this football club like fans haven't been listened to, and like it feels almost parental to me in terms of the fans have been told what's happening, how it's happening, where it's happening, instead of actually, Carrow Road development, the strategy, all of that stuff. And as I said, if you want to bring people on a journey, then it's about inclusivity. And this hasn't been a football club that has included the most important components for far too long, and that's the fan base. And that ultimately is why we end up here, where players are getting escorted out of the ground by police, and the levels of protesting outside. As I said, this isn't Norwich City. It isn't what it's about. It should be a football club that's rooted in its community, that this should be a really joyful place to come, and it's not. And that ultimately, I'm afraid, is because of the results and the performances, but also the institutional failure that has been seen not just this season but over a long period of time. Because where Norwich are isn't a result of 15 games this year. It is of 4 years. I wrote a piece this morning about Daniel Farke, and not necessarily about him. We can argue till the cows come home about whether you think it was the right or wrong decision to get rid of him. But I think what all of us can agree on is what has happened subsequently has been disastrous. Over sporting directors, over different ownership groups, 4 head coaches. They've all been different. There's not been a consistency of idea or thought. And there's been nothing really for this fan base to get behind for a long time. And that's why they're angry. And who can blame them? They pay, if not, then definitely one of the highest season tickets in the country, really, but definitely in the Championship. And they are consistently being served up performances that are terrible. And of course, as I said, to go back to what you do, when your messaging is then asking people not to abuse people, and you've got a centre half who's calling fans on social media knobs and gimps, the contradictions there are going to get exposed. It's such a sad state of affairs. I think everybody inside this place, around this place, watching this, maybe there'll be a few, I'm sure, gleeful people from across the border. So hello to you all. Care deeply about this football club and about putting it on a even keel and where it should be, which is competing towards the top end of this division. This isn't a football club that's angry, and I think genuinely, and I think that's what people should remember tonight, because this is a fan base that generally gives people more time than other football clubs. They are generally happy to go along with directions as long as they're spoken to and as long as they're brought along on the journey. And there's been none of that really over recent years. And that poor decision making and that inability to bring fans along creates what we're seeing inside the ground, but it also creates the poor decision making on the pitch in terms of the poor recruitment, the poor results, the poor style of play. There's just nothing about this Norwich team. And the fear is, I think, with the situation it is in and the position it is in, do I see players in there willing and up for this fight? I don't, I'm afraid. I just, beyond Kenny McLean, Josh Sargent, I think there's 3, 4, 5 that we could put in there. But beyond that, there's just very little at this moment in time to be positive about at this football club. And it kills me to say that. And that is why, they've got 2 weeks now. It's disrespectful to this fan base, to the people that come here every week, if we roll back against Birmingham on the 22nd and nothing has changed. That cannot happen. It cannot be allowed to happen. And if the people inside this football club think that they can go again, they can roll out again, words would fail me, to be completely honest. It is a shambles, I'm afraid, a complete shambles. And it needs to be sorted out. And the only way you do that is by sorting it out and getting on with it and not letting people and keeping people in position where, they've failed for too long and they've underperformed for far too long. It's time to, I'm afraid, for action and to make some really difficult decisions. So it's over to those guys to do that now. And that is where I will leave what has been a very long, very ranty, very emotional verdict. I hope some of that was coherent and made sense. It's not a position. I don't like standing here and saying the stuff I'm saying and painting Norwich City in this light and talking about people having to lose their jobs. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrendous. But it's where we're at. And I'm afraid people need to wake up and see that. Because if they don't, this is not going to change. This is not going to continue. So let's see something and let's see it quickly. Thank you very much for watching. Pinkin.com, the place to go. We'll have you covered throughout the break. We'll, of course, be across everything that happens, doesn't happen, doesn't move over the next 2 weeks. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon, folks.